It's another Friday afternoon on independent television and radio. It's Hitches and Voices, a program that spotlights on disability issues. Don't forget, Hitches and Voices is coming to you courtesy of Network for the Advancement of People with Visible Disabilities, NAVID. NAVID is a non-governmental organization that is based here in Benin City that is advancing the rights of persons with disability. Today on the program, we'll be touching on a very interesting subject, which is unleashing the potentials of persons with disability, benefits of the Edo State disability law. And I have a very wonderful guest with me in the studio to do justice to the subject. But before I introduce my guest, I would like to say that our interpreter for today, our sign language interpreter for today, is Goodluck Omusi. He will be doing justice to our deaf community so that they can follow up on what we are discussing on this program today. Like I said, I have a very wonderful guest with me. Don't forget that this segment of the program is coming to you courtesy of Joint National Association of Persons with Disability, JONAPID, with support from the Ford's Foundation. My guest today is the Director, Citizen Mediation Center, Edo State Ministry of Justice, Barrister Melody Omosa. Welcome to Hitches and Voices.
Thank you so very much, and good day, listeners and viewers.
All right, today, like I said, the subject is unleashing the potentials of persons with disability, benefit of the Edo State disability law. You know, the first question would be, before we even talk about unleashing the potentials or talking about potentials, the question would be, do society even believe or associate the word potentials with persons with disability? Is disability an absence of ability? That would be my first question to Barrister.
Thank you very much again for having me in today. And I would say right away that that truly is the perception of majority of our compatriots in Nigeria and in this part of developing society, in this part of the globe, where disability is associated with inability, being that you are unable. Because the understanding is that these are persons who do not have their senses complete, whether by way of visual or hearing impairment or physical disabilities. They are not complete. And if they are not complete human being, then they are not in a position to do any good for themselves, talk less of doing good to society. They just do not have what it takes to engage society and to be productive. So you are right in asking that question, that it is a myth that is commonly believed among the people, that once you are a person that lives with any form of disabilities, disabilities is equated with inability, if not altogether one who cannot contribute at all to society.
Beautiful. So for what you just said, disability has no relation or correlation with lack of ability.
Definitely not. Definitely not. What brings about disability or disabling environment? It's societal's attitude, environmental disparity, so to speak, inequalities that we experience in the system, where people with disabilities are not viewed as persons with diversities whose diversity should be approached and recognized based on their peculiarities and given equal measures to contribute to society. What I mean, for instance, is take a typical example that where you have a high-rise building, you are quick to think that if it's the building is up to a 10, 15 story building, you are quick to think that there should be an elevator for climbers, for those who need to get upstairs, okay? And we have situations where transportation has greatly improved. Before now, it was the case that, before you can navigate your way from one place to the other, from one source, from one country to another, you have to go by sea. And there takes several weeks, if not months, for you to get to your destination. With the advent of planes, it's now a commonplace that people have to fly. And where you have journeys to go, either you need to fly, you need a vehicle to take you there. Also, don't forget that before now, our forebears, they used to even travel by walking, right? Where they have to commute to their destination, traveling months and years. But there's been innovation. There's vehicle now, and to accelerate that, you have all forms of crafts for them to go. Either you are going by sea, going by air. And society termed that development, right? They work to make it easy. But when it comes to persons with disabilities who cannot go get up a high-rise building, instead of thinking of how to make that possible, you are saying, oh, they have a disability. I wonder how we would have termed our forefathers in those days that has to walk all the way from Edo to Lagos, all the way from Nigeria to Saudi Arabia. What was that? But society looked at development and provided a means for them. But when it comes to people with disability, you are not thinking that there should be equal rights for flyers as equal right for workers. Yes, you want to fly, I want to walk. Provide the means for me to be able to get to my place. So it is a societal issue. Disability is more of a societal issue. Inaccessible society, prejudice, and unenforced or inadequate or unenforced laws breeds disability. So it has nothing to do with the potentials, it has nothing to do with the skills or capacity that people with disabilities on their own have to contribute to society.
All right, you just clearly gave an analogy and trying to establish the factors that inhibit persons with disability from attaining their full potentials. I want you to deepen that conversation. Tell us more factors that are, on the way of persons with disability in attaining their full potentials, in maximizing their full potentials, looking at all the clusters of persons with disability.
Thank you very much. We have, our situation is inaccessible, it's a systemic problem. The society is largely inaccessible for people with disabilities. There are prejudices on the part of persons talking about their attitude, their infrastructural barriers, and more so their inadequate legislation. Good enough that now we are having disability right laws in place, both at the global and national level. And also in Nigeria, some states are beginning to domesticate that law. A case in point is Edo State, who now has a disability law in place. But one thing is to have a law, the other is for the implementation. It's not about just having policy. It's ensuring that those laws speak to make the difference in the lives of persons with disabilities. So when we deal with issues of systemic inaccessibility, where, like I said, people do not spare a thought for people with disabilities that they are part of society and they need to be provided for as a matter of right. We are not talking about charity here. So you want one with a disability to contribute to society, and you are looking at this person that is visually impaired, he is a wheelchair user, and so he shouldn't bother. Why stress the person? Why bother to come to work? It's stress for you to come to work. It's stress for you to navigate the public transport. Why not make it less stressful? Instead of asking that person to stay back at home and deny the benefit of the joy of contributing to society, why not have accessible transportation? Why not have a workplace that is accommodating? Why not provide the tools that these persons with disabilities, irrespective of the disability type, would have to contribute? So I recall a case. I once had a boss who, upon joining the public service, I told her, look, I do not just want to come to work. I want to be able to do something and contribute. And he like, who says you are not contributing? Oh, you are fine, you are doing well, you are very intelligent. Because I was asking specifically for tools to be able to do my
job.
work. I asked for those tools, and it was a show of sympathy. Oh no, don't let anybody talk you down. You are doing well. And that was left office without doing anything about that. But there came a time where a boss who is more enlightened and understanding asked, okay, what do you need to work? And we made that demand, and those was provided. And my impact was better felt and appreciated by my employers, right? So it's not about charity, it's about access. Create access for persons with disabilities to contribute. Hearing impaired persons, for instance, will find it difficult to work where there are no sign language interpreters. Where there are no captioning devices put in place, subscription and all that caption devices put in place to communicate. You remember, it's an issue of communication as far as they are concerned. Once that gap is breached, for which there are technological devices that can bridge the gap, apart from the use of a sign language interpreter. There are other assistive devices that can bridge the gap of communication. You will forget for a moment that this person is hearing impaired, because he will do his job seamlessly, whether as a lecturer, as a public servant in a government agency, as a graphic designer. He will work seamlessly and effectively, and will be very productive once those gaps or those tools that are needed are provided.
You know, your story just reminded me of a story a visually impaired person told me about his days in the university, that he had this head of department who told him that, look, young man, why are you bothering yourself? Every day I see you come to class struggling to attend classes, to attend lecture. Don't you have parents? Why are they stressing you to come to school? This is stress. They should just leave you at home, take care of you, give you monthly stipends, instead of allowing you to come to school and stress yourself like this. This is coming from a professor.
That is one who, though educated, is not aware of his environment. His mind is not enlightened at all. So you see that there is a difference, that yes, he may be a professor, like you said, but knows little or nothing about it. And instead of guessing, instead of second guessing, why not study disability? Why not seek to know about persons with disabilities and what they can do, rather than with your very limited understanding of the persons and the issues that concerns them, pass judgment on what you think it is best for them. It's ignorance displayed at the highest level. But good enough, we are talking about laws. Okay, you're going to ask
I was coming there. I was coming there. I mean, looking at all of these factors now, how does the Edo State's disability law comes in? How does it protect persons with disability, protect their intellect, protect their ability?
Thank you very much. You say the advocacy over the years has been to have a disability law, not just for the fun of it. In ensuring that there is a law in place, we try to see that law protects the interest of persons with disability, protects the aspirations of persons with disability. So we, for instance, the disability community came together, and even both at the national and international level, right? If you follow the story behind the passing of these laws and and also the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability by the United Nations, it is that the community of persons with disability have certain aspirations and certain concerns, and those concerns were clearly documented, and advocacy led to the passage of those documented interests and rights as laws to be implemented. Laws are not just there for the protection of the rights of persons with disabilities, which is, on the one hand, it is actually a mechanism for change. For instance, if an employer who is not enlightened would not on his own appreciate the quality of persons with disability and what they can bring to the table. Where you have a law that speaks specifically to the fact that you need to have persons with disability in your role of employment and ensure that they are part of the productive force that you have. Is no longer is limited knowledge will no longer be taken into account. He has to follow the law where it is enforced, and that's where you see that people with disabilities will be brought in, not by the understanding or lack of it by any individual. And even those who are so interested, they are not going to come in. Persons with disability will not be given that opportunity by the benevolence solely of such persons, but that the law so provides that, for instance, the national legislation we have in Nigeria that says 5% of job opportunities should be reserved for persons with disability. It's a matter of law. So every public institution must therefore ensure that in employment or in the constitution of their workforce, we have 5% job reservation for persons with disabilities. If the law provides for reasonable accommodation in the workplace, it behoves the employees, it behoves that agency of government to ensure that those tools that persons with disabilities, irrespective of their disability type, would need to function maximally and optimally in the workplace is provided for. It now becomes a matter of law. So it is in this state that the Edo State Disability Law comes very handy. And once the law is enforced, is implemented, it guarantees almost automatically the work rights of persons with disabilities. So that's where the law comes in that persons with disability have been able to transfer their aspiration to the law. Law now being documented and given the force of law by the passage of the House of Assembly and assent into law by the governor. Once that law is implemented, automatically the potential aspirations of persons with disabilities will come to bear, will come to light, in that, yes, law says we should be employed, we are accommodated, we are provided for, and we are able to do our job. And when that happens, society benefits maximally from what we have to offer.
You know, part of the challenge of disability is that some persons are not born with their disability. They acquire their disability in the course of life. And we've seen situations where people who are professionals, who were gainfully employed, lose their job on account of their disability. Yes. Their employers will have to lay them off because they lost their sight or they find themselves on the wheelchair. They are now wheelchair users. How does the law protect persons like this?
Okay, so first to say that apart from being a professional and a lawyer and a director in the Ministry of Justice at Edo State, I'm also the executive director of Network for the Advancement of People with Disabilities. And we have had to champion advocacy in that regard. We have had to bring someone back to office who was laid off. His salary was stopped and was asked to proceed on retirement because he gradually lost the use of his vision. And automatically was suddenly stopped and asked to proceed on compulsory retirement. He brought that issue. We battled it for 4 years until the Edo State government reinstated him and allowed him to retire at the due time. We are not saying reinstate such persons or allow such persons to be in the system and leave them to be not to be productive in the system. Disability is an accidental byproduct of nature, for which there is an alternative means of adaptation by way of rehabilitation. When such persons are rehabilitated, taught how to cope differently in a workplace, given the tools, because the law, the Edo State Disability Law, so no one should be discriminated on account of his disability. So if you ask him to stop work because it's a person with disability, it is an obvious discrimination. The reason you are asking him to stop is because he has now acquired a disability. What the law expects you to do is to have reasonable accommodation, have this person trained, and provide what he needs to be able to cope in the new reality where he finds himself.
Beautiful. Don't forget, like I said, this segment of the program, which is talking on the Edo State Disability Law, is brought to you by Joint National Association of Persons with Disability with support from the Ford's Foundation. And our guests in the studio, the Executive Director, Navid, and also the Director, Citizen Mediation Center, Edo State Ministry of Justice. He's been doing justice to the subject. But he talked about laying off persons because of their disability. And he talked about the fact that that is against the law, but what the law expects from you is to make adjustments for these persons. Administrative, environmental, and procedural adjustments for these persons to function better. But there's an argument about, you know, reasonable accommodation cost on the side of the employer. Because when you acquire your disability, what it means is that the employer now or the company would have to make some certain adjustments.
Yes.
So this is where assistive technology comes in. Can you tell us a bit on that?
Okay, yes, I will speak of assistive technology, but first of all, reasonable accommodation should start from the mindset. There needs to be an attitudinal shift. You need to make that a relevant adjustment. That whereas this person who was a very productive staff and has now become accidentally one that has a disability by accident, you need not lay such a person. You need to find how that person can remain part of the workforce and make that necessary adjustment. That is what reasonable accommodation is. So have that attitudinal shift to say, first agree that instead of thinking of paying, going by the labor laws, give a 5 months or 6 months, as the case may be, salary upfront and ask the person to go away. Think of accommodating that person and make that adjustment. Yes, there are technologies that will...
No, but let's look at the cost. Because let me play the devil's advocate here now. Let's look at the cost. Because for an employer who employed someone and suddenly the person, you know, loses his sight, what that means is that he has to now deploy assistive technology to assist this person. And those assistive technologies, they don't come cheap.
So they do not come cheap, but first of all, it has to be done. And yes, you would say that there is cost. So I purposely started the conversation and my postulation from the part that there need to be that attitudinal shift deliberately, because sometimes there may be no cost involved at all. If this person, for instance, he works in a three-story building where you have a ground floor, why not make that change to say, okay, you know what, you can still continue your job. We are moving your department or unit to the ground floor where you don't need to struggle. For instance, if the disability is physical, affecting the limbs of the person's inability to climb properly or whatever it is, right? You make that adjustment. There are adjustments that you can make to accommodate these persons. You can also change the job description. So it's okay, this is where we want to deploy you right now because of what you can still do in spite of what has become of you as a result of whatever accident or sickness or whatever has happened, right? Now, if you talk about cost, the law has also made provision that the cost needs to be reasonable. And so with proper adjustment, yes, you will need to provide these materials. And that is where government also comes in. That such, first of all, if it is a government agency, it's a government, if it's the government that is the employer, then the Constitution empowers you to make provision for all citizens, irrespective of you are not going to their status. You are not going to distinguish that this is a citizen with disability and a citizen without disability. Provide an equal footing for them to be able to work. But if it's private organizations, then there may need be some form of incentive, a form of some tax rebates, and some things to just encourage them to say, we are understand that you are bearing the additional cost. The cost will be shared by both government, that company, and also the persons with disability also will make some adjustment, right? On the part of people with disability, they are doing so much to want to make a difference, to want to, in fact, they have this burden of wanting to make a statement, wanting to prove a point, that in spite of their disability, they still can contribute. And you see some working overtime to prove that point. But really, they do not have any, they need not prove a point. If they have been trained, if they have what it takes to deliver, society should just accommodate them and make sure that they have an environment, they have an institution that is adequately adjusted for them to fit in.
All right, but I think it's a win and a gain for any establishment, any organization that employs the services of someone with a disability. Because of societal perception, such a person have a point to prove that, yes, despite my disability, I can contribute to the development of wherever I find myself. It's a wrap on today's edition of the program. I'd like to thank my guests for coming on the show today. Thank you, Executive Director Navid and Director, Citizen Mediation Center. Thank you for coming on HITCHES and Voices.
Thank you for having me today.
Don't forget, HITCHES and Voices came to you courtesy of Network for the Advancement of People with Visible Disability. We'll do this again same time next week. To then, spot the hitch and be a voice.